Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Nvidia daily update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Nvidia stock. Let's go over what has happened to the stock, what we can expect moving forward, and all of that good stuff. So if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. And of course, if you do enjoy my thoughts, analysis, technical analysis, etc. on the charts, I do share it with my members every single day. For just $3 a month, you get access to all my thoughts, post updates, mainly on Tesla stocks, sometimes other stocks that I do share, like lately I've been sharing Amazon, Google, even Lulu today I shared that I didn't enter myself. So that is down below if you're interested for just $3 a month, or for $5 a month, you get access to everything in the first tier. Plus, of course, Nvidia daily updates as well. So yeah, that's pretty much that. So let's jump into it. Nvidia closing the day up about 0.4%, which, did give back a fair amount of the gains. Of course, it was up decently more than that at the top of the day at the very least, closing at 139.4. Now, before we get into this video, I just want to say, the Nvidia bulls have been getting very unhinged because I suggested any type of bearishness on the stock, and so I want to make something just very, very clear in my comment section. If you're typing like a 3-year-old, or like someone in grade 3 or something like that, essentially like very immaturely and rudely, I guess I should say, guys, it takes me 3 seconds to ban you. It takes me literally 3 seconds to not only remove your comment, but to also pretty much ban you from commenting again. It's not difficult. So again, if you have nothing good to say, if you're just typing for the sake of being an asshole, you'll be treated like an asshole. It's really that simple. So please have some, respectable comments at the very least, because it's just, guys, what are you doing, man? Like, honestly, what are you guys doing? It's just cringe. Anyways, jumping into it, Nvidia. So what does this actually mean? Well, Nvidia, like we mentioned the other day, right? We mentioned on Friday how Nvidia, I'll remove the bands for now. I'll talk about the bands later, just so it doesn't look too bad for people that are not used to looking at the bands like that. We mentioned how Nvidia did come up to the first target, which was my main target. I did expect rejection, right? Obviously, I have no issues admitting it. I did expect it to reject from here and make its way back down. It didn't, right? So on Friday, we mentioned how we broke past that 618 Fibonacci, which is this red line. So the next target is, of course, the next Fibonacci level, which are these green ones up here, which is that kind of smart money zone, where essentially what that means is the fact that if any bears we're waiting for the opportune time to really pounce on the stock and short it, or whatever the case may be, which I don't short personally, so I didn't buy. I mean, I should have, obviously, in hindsight, but I'm not a shorter. I don't like to short stocks. But if you are someone that likes to short stocks, this Fibonacci here is like the absolute just best risk versus reward, right? This is when bulls get cocky and certain bears, it's at least not experienced bears get scared as well, right? Bulls get cocky and inexperienced bears get scared. Just like on the flip side, for instance, when you get a massive rally and you retrace back down, you flip the Fibonacci's upside down from what I'm showing here, and it's the same idea, right? If it retraces to these levels, that's usually very good, and that's when bulls start getting scared and bears get cocky. It's the exact opposite. And the bulls have definitely been getting cocky. I tell you that right now, based on my comment section on Friday. The bulls are getting cocky. So what does this actually mean, though? Well, it means this, right? So there's a lot of inflections, if you will, here. So we have the Fibonacci's, which I'm going to delete now so it doesn't look too messy, but the Fibonacci's, that's number one. This is like the area to, if there was a spot for the bears to pounce the stock back down, yeah, this was it. And clearly they're attempting to do it, right? On top of that, we have officially gap filled the DeepSeek gap down that we had very quickly, I must admit, much quicker than I expected. So that's officially filled. And on top of that, we are, of course, at the trend line resistance of this downward channel that we are in, which looks like this, right? So what does this ultimately mean for Nvidia, right? With RSI, of course, being overbought. I don't buy stocks that are overbought RSI. That's just my rule. It's overbought. And of course, it's also, if I just quickly bring out my bands once again, just to demonstrate this first before I remove them, just so it doesn't look too annoying to look at. It is getting very close to overbought bands. It's actually slightly in the overbought bands already. So it's not at the Bollinger Band just yet. You can see there's a bit more ways to go there. But if I bring out my other band, you can see it starts to enter the first tier, almost closer to the second tier at the high of the day of overbought as well. So again, what does this actually mean though moving forward, right? Well, Nvidia, if the bulls, let's talk about the bullish side first. So I'll give the bulls something so that they don't get mad at me again and in the comment section, right? What they want to do is essentially they want to break out of this trend line and essentially ultimately break today's high. If the bulls can not only break above this trend line, but more importantly, close above this trend line, which again, let's say starting tomorrow, 142.5, 143 at least, in my opinion, break above that, and more importantly, hold above that, close candles above that, ideally even a few daily candles above that. I usually have like a 2 or 3 day rule where, I want to see closures Why do I have this rule? Because you have a lot of fake outs in the market nowadays. Let me show you Nike. Nike is a really good example recently of a fake out, which can occur, right? So what happened here on Nike? Just to demonstrate a point, right? You can see this area here, massive area of bounces, supports, etc. Right? Every time it's come down here, it's pretty much bounced. Then what did it do? Not that long ago, pretty much a week ago, it crashed well below that on this red candle. Looked very bearish, closed well below that area, and naturally you would assume it to come back up and make its way down even further, but it didn't. Instead, it closed below here, probably trapped a lot of people, panic sold, etc., etc., etc. Probably bears got very greedy here, and then what did it do? It rallied back up. It pretty much had a massive fake out down here, and this is why I have that kind of 2 to 3 day rule. Usually when you get these kind of closures, you want to see maintained closures down below these levels for at least 2 or 3 days to solidify the fact that that is most likely, I mean, nothing is guaranteed, of course, but most likely, yeah, this is a legitimate breakdown. Same thing to Nvidia, right? So if we go back to Nvidia, the bulls want to not only close above 142.5/143, something like that, of course, ish. I mean, obviously the higher the better, the more convincing, but they want to maintain that, right? They'll want to maintain those kind of closures and maintain above about 142.5, we'll say, for, again, 2 or 3 days in a row, or else this, in theory, could be a massive, massive false breakout, assuming we even get to that situation, of course. That's what the bulls want to see, because if they do that, then we can, of course, get a nice little continuation, at the very least, to retest all-time highs, if not make all-time highs. But again, usually when I see stocks entering my bands into overbought territory, the RSI is starting to get overbought, etc., 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 I personally start thinking upside is starting to get pretty limited. Right now, there could be more upside, but it just, in my opinion, usually in these cases, as you can see, every time the RSI has been overbought, it usually has meant that upside has officially been a little bit on the more limited side, right? There's not too much more juice left to squeeze, which in Nvidia's case, I wouldn't be too surprised, especially after this absolutely phenomenal rally that it's had from the lows down here. Now, to the downside, right? What do the bears want to see? Or at the very least, even the bulls potentially want to see, because, even to the downside, there's still a bullish thesis, right? This is the thesis I personally expect to happen. This is the more bullish but short-term bearish thesis. Nvidia does retrace, right? It does retrace, and I do have a theory, the fact that Nvidia is ultimately going to most likely go sideways in this vicinity right here until earnings, which essentially would mean that Nvidia is probably going to be going sideways between about 142, as high as 142, down to, in my opinion, 133, worst case scenario, closer to the 128.9 region, which was that area of support down here. I don't even think we'll go that low personally, until earnings, of course, I might add. And then earnings will be the determining factor. But my current theory is the fact that, again, between 140-ish to about 132-ish, again, somewhere around there, will pretty much just do a whole lot of nothing and just really just dry up the premium, dry up the stock, make it go sideways for a while, and everyone that's buying puts or calls or whatever, it's just going to slowly fade a decay away, and then we await earnings, and that's most likely what we get, right? Kind of like what we did back here as we had that massive rally, and then we essentially just pretty much went sideways up until earnings that ultimately decided the fate of the stock, which in that case, of course, was to the downside. Not saying that's going to happen this time, but it is, of course, a possibility, especially as long as we remain in this downward channel, because the actual bearish side is the fact that, well, what do you do in a downward channel? Keyword, downward. You go down. So the bearish perspective and the bearish aspect and the bearish thesis here is the fact that, well, as long as Nvidia does not break out of this downward channel and essentially still continues making lower lows, lower highs, which it is, as you can see, we made this lower low here, and now this in theory has a chance to be a lower high, especially as long as we remain inside this downward channel. It could, technically speaking, make its way all the way back down to the lower end of this channel, closer to, let's say, 105, 106, 107, something like that post earnings. That becomes a very legitimate possibility. Now, obviously, no one thinks it's going to happen, but just because no one thinks it's going to happen and because everyone in the comment section is telling you it's going to all-time highs, that usually doesn't mean shit, right? So, in my opinion, you let the levels decide for you. As long as Nvidia is in this downward channel, and especially as long as it cannot break this high over here, closer to about 149, it is making lower lows, lower highs, right? Lower lows, lower highs, right? So this pattern can potentially continue playing out until proven otherwise, and until we essentially make that higher high, and then we make that lower or higher low into another higher high, essentially. You know what I mean? I hope that makes sense. That's kind of a more of a structured thing. So let's see how this ultimately plays out, right? But again, for now up until earnings, which is next week, Wednesday, so about a week, and actually just about a week now, really starting from tomorrow, I personally think sideways action in this vicinity is expected. Earnings comes around, and that most likely will determine whether or not we do just go straight to all-time highs, or we actually end up playing out this channel to the downside once again. So let's see how this plays out, right? But again, for now, I think it's sideways. And if we see another red day tomorrow back down to 135, 134, I will be starting to sell cash liquid puts. Again, on the thesis, the fact that I just don't think it's going to go anywhere yet until earnings happens. And yeah, that's my thesis. That's kind of what I have right now. And again, just my personal rule of thumb is whenever a stock has an overbought RSI, on my RSI settings, of course, with my bands, at the very least, one of them showing that we're entering overbought territory, which we did at the height of the day, which is what I told my members. Yeah, you can go higher, but to me, the potential of it going higher up here is not as high. I like to buy stocks when they're around here, right? Go back to the videos back in, when it was around 120, back, during these days, early February, late June or January. You can see me. I was constantly saying, I think we're closer to a bottom than we're not. I think we're closer to a bottom than we're not. Blah, 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 blah. I kept saying that over and over and over and over. And obviously that ended up being correct, right? So let's see how this plays out. But that's all I got for you. Let me know what you think down below, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.